America is essentially a dream. It is a dream of a land where men of all races, of all nationalities, and of all creeds can live together as brothers. The substance of the dream is expressed in these profound words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
For centuries, the principles upon which America was founded did not apply to African Americans. For 300 years, Africans were kidnapped and shipped to the Americas in enormous numbers, to be bought, sold, and worked like cattle. After the Civil War, the blacks of North America were officially freed from slavery. But well into the 20th century, most black people were still not free. They were not free to live where they chose, to work at decent jobs, to get a quality education. African Americans were not free to vote, to change the laws that oppressed them. They were not even free to eat, travel, shop, or play where they wished. America was a racially and economically segregated society, and the captives of segregation were the former slaves and their descendants. The year was 1955. King's first job as a minister was at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, just across the street from the Alabama State Capitol. Black bus riders who paid the same fare as whites were required by law to give up their seats to white riders and move to the back of the bus as the whites boarded. When all seats had been taken away by whites, the black riders had to stand. When a black woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, she was arrested.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, have been engaged in a nonviolent protest against injustices and indignities experienced on city buses.
On Monday, December 5th, 1955, there were no black passengers on the buses of Montgomery. That night, a committee was formed to carry on the momentum of the one-day boycott. Martin Luther King was elected its president.
We go back to the buses, let us be loving enough to turn an enemy into a friend.
At the age of 26, in his first action as leader, King gave an electrifying speech calling for an active refusal to cooperate with what he deemed an evil system.
We will be able to emerge from the bleak and desolate midnight of man's inhumanity to man to the bright and glittering daybreak of freedom and justice.
In response to the repressive forces of segregation, King evoked the Christian doctrine of love. This meant maintaining compassion for the white people of Montgomery while fighting their discriminatory system.
Alabama state law requiring segregation of races on buses still stands.
For Dr. King, the key to victory would be in never resorting to violence. The white citizens of Montgomery, however, had a different agenda.
All public carriers operating in Alabama are hereby directed to strictly adhere to all present existing segregation laws in our state or suffer the consequences.
More and more blacks began carpooling to ensure the bus boycott would succeed.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, do now and will continue to carry on our mass protest. We feel that we are right. We have a legitimate gripe, a legitimate protest.
Like many other black leaders, he was arrested numerous times for activities in violation of what were deemed repressive laws throughout the South. King would later write, "I was proud of my crime. It was the crime of joining my people in a nonviolent protest against injustice. It was the crime of seeking to instill within my people a sense of dignity and self-respect. It was the crime of desiring for my people the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was above all the crime of seeking to convince my people that non-cooperation with evil is just as much a moral duty as cooperation with good.
And we feel also that one of the great glories of American democracy is that we have the right to protest far right. This is a non-violent protest. We are depending on moral and spiritual forces, using the method of passive resistance. Even if we have to receive violence, we will not return violence.
I know sometimes how discontent we get, and we have a right to get discontent, and how frustrated we get in the process sometimes. But I submit to you this evening that this way of nonviolence will help us not to seek to rise from a position of disadvantage to one of advantage, thus subverting justice. We will not substitute one tyranny for another. For black supremacy is as dangerous as white supremacy.
But many in the civil rights movement were not as forgiving as King, and they were becoming increasingly impatient. Malcolm X was growing in stature, and more people were responding to his message of black nationalism or black separatism. A new generation of leaders such as Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, Bobby Seale, and Huey Newton were eager for more decisive change, and they often expressed their anger at the continuing outrages through a call to take up arms. In 1964, for the first time, King experienced violence directed against him by blacks, as he had many times by whites. During an appearance in Harlem, he was assaulted by black Muslims, though King realized consensus in the movement would be increasingly difficult to achieve. He pressed on with his program of civil disobedience, peaceful resistance, and what he called non-cooperation with evil. And where many of the more militant factions were speaking of whites as the enemy, King repeatedly insisted that the brotherhood of man transcended all races, religions, political, social, and economic differences. After passage of the Civil Rights Act, King's next major objective was the achievement of full voting rights. In Alabama, only 1 out of every 100 black residents was able to register to vote. This was due to a testing scheme similar to grandfather clauses and poll taxes, which were rigged by state and local government officials. Thus, it was almost impossible for blacks to register.
We will be the participants in a great building process that will make America a new nation. We will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. This is our challenge. This is the way we must grapple with this dilemma. We will be a great people. Let us have faith in the future. I know it's dark sometimes. And I know all of us begin to ask, how long will we have to live with this system? I know all of us are asking, how long will prejudice blind the visions of men, darken their understanding, and drive bright-eyed wisdom from her sacred throne? When will wounded justice, lying prostrate on the streets of our cities, be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of men? Yes, when will the radiant star of hope be plunged against the nocturnal bosom of this lonely night?
In 1955, before Martin Luther King entered public life, in much of the United States, Americans of African descent could not even vote. King's work had made it possible for Edward Brooke to be elected the first black U.S. Senator. In 1967, Thurgood Marshall was sworn in as the first black Supreme Court Justice. That same year, Carl Stokes and Richard Hatcher were elected the first black mayors of major U.S. cities. In 1968, Shirley Chisholm became the first African-American woman elected to Congress. In 1992, Carol Moseley Brown became the first black woman elected to the United States Senate. But if this seems like too little too late, remember that the legacy of Dr. King remains a call to personal action for profound and immediate positive change.